live, episode 99 of this podcast. My God, what a long journey it's been, but at the same time, it kind of feels like yesterday. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure as soon as you arrive, just hit that like button, share our video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Check out our memberships. More importantly, check out our Patreon, where you can become a direct supporter of the Cradle. As you know me, I'm Esteban Carrillo, the news editor for the Cradle, and I'm joined by Karim Shami, a content creator and the writer for the Cradle, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmeen Narwani. And as the title of the video says, we really want to talk about how Israel and its genocidal acts in Gaza and its endless stream of wars against all of its neighbors are essentially pushing for the collapse of the entire US system. We've seen it, in all more nations like kind of turning away from the US dollar, right, because of the sanctions, more nations speaking up about the genocide, and even those who haven't really spoken out against the actual genocide, they talk about the starvation, right? Like the images over the past couple of weeks of like skeletal children and every day more deaths. At this point, I think the death toll from starvation stands at around 180. And if you guys know the actual figure, please correct me if I'm wrong. But it's obviously very, very high. Little aid coming in. You have Netanyahu coming out on the news and saying, there's no starvation in Gaza. This is the UN. It's Hamas. You have the US coming in and saying, Donald Trump saying the same thing. Yesterday, he gave a horrible quote in which he said, I know what I would do in Gaza, but I cannot say it, right? So, like, pointing towards what is it, like the atomic bomb? I don't know what this man meant, except, for the mass killing of the Palestinians there. You have the Netherlands declaring Israel essentially a threat to their national security. You have the US, the French Saudi conference on a Palestinian state, which is something we'll get into in a moment. Everything is just kind of, it's like everything just keeps closing in around the Western system, right? The US led international system. We have a great report from the Lancet that illuminates a lot of this as well, which is something that we're going to talk about later. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Are we at a tipping point? Is this finally the tipping point that so many people, including us, have been talking about for years at this point? Or is this just another day at the office for the Zionists?
I mean, for me, I've been calling this tipping point for a long time, and people call me optimistic and, delusional. And it's, I always say, like, you cannot be diverted by what's happening on the ground. Um, the ground does impact, the corridors of power to a certain extent, but their calculations are sometimes far removed from what's happening on the ground. We're seeing this flight from countries like the UK and France, especially the UK and the Keir Starmer government, so committed to Israel beyond anything we've heard from anyone outside the Germans, really. And now he's pushing for establishment of Palestinian state. We will get into that. The whole Palestinian statehood thing, the whole UN push, in my view, is kind of scammy. But I do think what's happening is things are coming to a head on this issue. If you notice, just globally, obviously the Ukraine war has rocked some large chunks of the global economy, particularly Europe's. I mean, Europe's been the biggest loser of that, but the global South wasn't much impacted. In fact, I would argue that they made hay from the situation. So it has not been a globally impactful issue the way Gaza has. Mm-hmm. Gaza has rallied the entire global South, except for many Arab and Muslim nations, sadly, in the region in particular, who have struggled with credibility and had, a whack taken at their legitimacy over Gaza. They've kind of been treading water, but it's taken a massive, massive whack at the unipolar order, the Western states, the allies of Israel that have supported and armed and, defended its narratives throughout the last almost 2 years. Nearly, yeah. Now, I think what is speeding this up is we're watching the mass starvation, all those things about no aid is getting through. And, we've got this US Israeli militant outfit that is like helping aid get through. All of that has just fallen apart with the images, as you mentioned, Esteban, of literally skeletal children and babies. And so that's made it
unsustainable,
imperative for these nations to say something, because they can't get away with their old, narratives at all anymore. And so what they're looking to do is use the Palestinian statehood issue, a popular issue, and hijack it and control it and ensure the outcome they want, which we'll get into for a bit. But also, as the heat is rising in non-Western countries, okay, so like we saw the Hague states or the Hague group in Colombia, 2 weeks ago or whatever, last week, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Netherlands declaring that Israel was a state that was now impacting its national security, and trying to impact its political system, which is why it's considered a national security threat. And obviously, Brazil joining on to the ICC's or ICJ's genocide case against. These kind of initiatives are suddenly taking off. And now what's interesting is Trump, the Americans, biggest supporters of Israel materially and otherwise in international fora, is constantly threatening states, including allies, from doing anything towards Palestinian statehood or doing anything that would impact Israel negatively, including sanctions, right? So I think this, I'm personally hoping that Trump will follow through and order punitive actions like sanctions and et cetera against any country, any government that moves to sanction Israel, support Palestinian statehood, et cetera. He will, by doing so, accelerate the pushback against Western initiatives and open the door to multipolar ones. Just like we talked about, 2 years ago, just like the freezing of Russian assets frightened the entire global South and some multipolar powers, this kind of US reaction, will serve mainly to undermine trust in the US-led financial system, in Western banking, and even in over-reliance on US goods and services. These countries are now still grappling with Trump's tariffs, right? He's announced deals with only a handful of countries, says it's not worth our time to even negotiate with the rest. Okay, only a few countries get Indonesia, Japan, Vietnam, a few countries, right? Some are like out and out embarrassing. I mean, the Japanese basically became full-on vassal state. The Indonesians are allowing the Americans access to their natural resources. I mean, crazy stuff. So all of this is just accelerating, the tariffs included, lack of trust in being, discomfort of all countries in being over-reliant on US goods and services, and also exporting, having the US as a critical and key export market, right? So really, Trump is accelerating the process of the crash of empire, and it's Israel that is the core global issue, foreign policy issue, Gaza specifically, that is making this happen.
Indeed. I want to thank Pink Rose, a $5 donation. They say their image is in the toilet for sure. Indeed. Also, a lot of people from Brazil. Thank you so much. Muito obrigado for being here. Tell your friends. Yes, I mean, the situation with Israel in particular, right, is like they're taking a flamethrower to an already, burning building and just like trying to really bring it down. I remember in the group a few days ago, there was this headline from some Jewish publication that said, we need to start making friends with China. And there's like this discourse of Israel saying we need to turn east. Even Israel themselves are saying, oh man, the sacred cow is running a bit thin now, so better start turning back to them. Karim, go ahead.
Yeah, what's different today in Gaza is it's not like the Iraqi war or Afghanistan, where people understood what happened after 20 years. Usually, the foreign policy of the United States, or when they go to war or to topple a government or whatever they do across the world, usually their citizens don't know what's happening. Only few knows what's happening.
True.
And if you go to TVs or whatever report, nobody will believe them. This is the first time that we saw the foreign policy of the United States is spilling inside the United States and is affecting its internal affairs. يعني what's happening is يعني everybody, even comedians, even people that should not talk about politics, now they are supporting Gaza. And it's the first time in history we're seeing people, famous people, politicians and comedians or whatever, and artists in the United States are being cancelled because they are supporting Israel.
I mean,
I know
that honestly did happen with South African apartheid when it hit its peak. And we're kind of at that place now where Israel's concerned. In my lifetime, I've never seen anything like the South African anti-apartheid movement that became so grassroots, became everywhere. I mean, I remember where we went from Western governments just absolutely towing the, support of apartheid line, and then that unraveling. And it started, by the way, with the boycott, and boycott and sanction and divestment grassroots project. And sure enough, universities and then corporations were vowing to step away from South Africa and doing business with them. That hasn't happened to this extent yet. It will happen. But the public, the global and even Western public outrage here has surpassed where we were with South Africa, in my view. But go ahead, Karim. I just wanted to.
Yeah, my point was eventually finished. So that's what I was saying. Yeah. So what's happening usually we didn't see it in the Iraq war or their intervention, even in Ukraine. In Ukraine, the voices were not as loud as today. That's one, and the second one is regarding South Africa. The problem is that the media is still, and Hollywood and many sectors in the United States are still controlled by Israel and AIPAC. So we still need to see the shift in this, because still the decision makers and the makers of Hollywood, which have very big impact not only on the Americans, even in the Arab world and people
in
that
the world,
should be against the US policy. So I think this. Yes.
I do think we've seen U.S. media and editorials, because they know they can't, hold the line any longer. We have seen very recently, especially with the starvation thing. I don't know, with like almost 2 years of the genocide, how they just jumped on the starvation issue. This is why I don't believe it. I think they're all jumping on the starvation issue because they realize at some point they have to intervene. This is as good a point because they are seeing things slipping away from them dramatically. And I would argue that Hollywood and sort of like pop culture in the West is already completely or more or less on the Palestine bandwagon. I mean, at the Gucci fashion show, I think it was the Gucci fashion show, the main designer unrolled the Palestinian flag as he walked for the applause on the runway. Like, you're seeing it everywhere now. There's so many major rock bands, major musical artists who are, openly jumping on that bandwagon. Where every day we're seeing outrage by Jewish actors, Jewish musicians, who are speaking even more strongly against Israel than non-Jewish ones who are perhaps worried about.
Yeah, there was this video this weekend from Miriam Margolyes, I think is her name. She was like in a Harry Potter movie, like this older lady, and she was saying, are the Jews not seeing that we're acting like the Nazis? This is her words. This is literally what she says.
She's been consistently good on Palestine. But she did do a new video. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's to your point, Charmaine, because also, the Handala, the ship that was carrying aid, also detained this weekend. So it's just like this snowball that just keeps getting worse and worse, but they still try to whitewash it, right? They still really try to wash the blood of the hands. And we have a great example of this. And I want us to get into this because
yes.
Over the weekend, or actually, no, I think it was on Friday, the Wall Street Journal publishes a commentary by Yasser Abu Shabab, the head of an ISIS-linked militia that is working alongside the Israeli military in Gaza to, shoot at the Palestinians who are going to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, stealing the aid, reselling it. The OCHA, this UN agency, consider him to be the central figure on the aid theft inside Gaza. Nevertheless, the Wall Street Journal publishes this commentary from him in which he says, Gazans have turned against Hamas, and I will rule Gaza moving forward, blah, blah, blah. And then we've discovered this headline, and before I let you guys go on, I just want to mention this quickly, from I-24 News, right, a Hebrew channel, in which they refer to Abu Shabab as illiterate. The man cannot read or write. So who really wrote this opinion piece that the Wall Street Journal, plastered on their front page over the last few days, trying to whitewash all of the crimes that are being committed in Gaza? And because this is the push of like saying it's Hamas that's stealing aid and it's the UN that is not working with whatever to bring aid in. Nevertheless, yet another example of the dishonesty of Western media.
Well, to be honest, in my view, it's the same people who got editorials for Al-Qaeda and other militants, in major Western publications during the Syrian war. We saw so many of, these guys were like with the most militant wings of the Muslim Brotherhood, or they were absolutely linked to Al-Qaeda, and they would have, they would publish editorials in the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, but to see this guy he looks like a street thug. Okay,
he escaped prison on October 7th during the first weeks of the attack. He escaped prison. He was in prison for drug dealing
and be linked to ISIS. Okay, because there has been this, probably Israeli-backed ISIS element in Gaza. Even during the Syrian war and stuff, trying to attacking Hamas and trying to undermine Hamas. And this guy, Yasser Abu Shabab, writes about how support for Hamas is eroding. Nobody trusts Hamas. The guy's with ISIS. He's being paid and armed by Israel. The Israelis admitted it. They had a discussion shortly after he surfaced in the media in general, his presence there. And they said, yes, Netanyahu said, yes, I am supporting this group. These guys are working, okay, these ISIS-linked guys armed by Israel are working with GHF, right? The American mercenary firm
also known as the Hunger
dribbling
Games.
out food aid to Gazans and shooting them, okay?
Exactly.
And the Wall Street Journal gave this guy space.
Karim, I sent you an image of the Wall Street Journal headline that they published. I don't know if we can put it up just to illustrate it. We also have the image of the I-24, in which they refer to him as illiterate Palestinian leader who wrote a column for the Wall Street Journal. So it's I don't even know what to say, honestly. I don't know if you guys want to add anything about this. It's just so absurd.
No, I think it's just important to bring to the attention of viewers, because honestly, it's something I would have skipped had I not seen his name, as the byline. I think that's when we all kind of collectively fell off our chairs here at the Cradle.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I still can't believe. I mean, I guess I'm giving the Wall Street Journal too much credit by being this, surprised by it, because we've seen what they've done. We've seen like this whole machine just working endlessly. How many BBC staffers have come out and said the BBC's only job is to whitewash, crimes? The New York Times, everywhere, you have these declarations. This is our report. This is our report. I sent you the very last image in our chat, Karim, is the Wall Street Journal headline.
Yeah.
So an Israeli in our comment section is saying Israel is collapsing, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Ha ha ha, winning on 7 fronts. Oh, okay. Habibi. Okay, let me just say, okay, that no, Israel is overextending itself. Do you remember the old Reagan narrative about how Afghanistan made the Soviet Union collapse, all right? Mm-hmm. Which many people bought into, but there were many other reasons the Soviet Union collapsed that didn't have to do with Afghanistan. Literally the overextension. This is when we started to learn about the overextension of countries. The US is overextended into every territory around the world. Hence its massive, $32, $35 trillion debt, okay, which rises exponentially every year. The Israelis, without US help and constant daily assistance, military, financial, will collapse overnight. The Israelis, their military is getting super thinned out. Okay, reservists refusing. They had an oversubscription after October 7th. Reservists are not showing up. Israelis are refusing to fight. A big chunk of Israelis who experienced some battle in the Gaza field are under psychiatric care or are killing themselves. You are a country of 9 million people, at least 20% of whom are Arab and Muslim, and you do not have, you're comfortable like Tel Aviv beach loving, you know, rave dancing youth don't have what it takes to fight a war on 7 fronts. Those 7 fronts are quiet for reasons, many reasons, having entirely to do with the United States using all of its leverage to shut down those governments and keep control of them, okay? So you can swan in there with a few of your troops and pretend that you can actually occupy, or given the weapons, you know, absolutely unnecessary missiles to bombard countries mercilessly. That doesn't win you wars. You cannot just do it from air and missile. In the end, the Israelis will have to fight to retain these lands. And the Israeli occupation army simply doesn't have the chops, the balls, the capabilities. They cry. Lebanon has seen Israeli occupation forces cry when they're faced with a Hezbollah fighter. In their minds, they think they're stronger now, but wait till that level actually gets there. So no, in fact, as I said earlier, I'm doing a talk in Istanbul about why the Israeli frog continues to boil, and worse so than when we first introduced the topic about a year and a half ago, and it's bad.
No, it really is bad.
Yeah,
I want to read a couple of nations. Sorry, Karin, to cut you off.
Yes.
Quickly, Pink Rose, $2. Iran, where are you? Love the cradle. Thumbs up. Shannon L, $4.99. The U.S. is not a democracy. Majority of America's support is stopping aid to Israel. I do believe it's true. I think, sadly, the U.S. is a highly propagandized and ignorant society. No offense, you are kept ignorant. You know, I went to high school in the U.S., so I can speak to that. Go ahead, Karim.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Pink Rose and Shannon, and I wanted to reply to Pink Rose. So the answer
Where is Iran?
is,
What's the
where is
question, right?
Iran? Iran, they have a doctrine and they have a fatwa. And if you read their doctrines and the fatwa, it says that Iran will use its military power only to defend its borders and only for defense. And in their doctrine also, they say when the enemy stops, we will stop. So unless this changes, Iran will remain like this. They only react and they will not initiate any war or any strike against any entity. So for them, if somebody did something on their soil or outside their soil, they have the right to retaliate, and that's it. If the enemy continues, they will continue, and the moment the enemy stops, they will stop. That's their mentality during war and during peace. Until this changes or there's a new fatwa or a new doctrine, the foreign policy and the military actions of Iran will not change.
Mrs. H says she means Israel, wouldn't need to say they're winning if they were. I mean, it's very true. I mean, this little piddly state keeps talking about we have the right to exist. Why do you have to insist on it so much if you do already? You know, whatever. Skip those narratives. They're not worth our time. But about Iran? Don't forget, we learned and we heard from a number of officials in Iran during the war with Israel, 12-day war with Israel, that in fact Iran has calculated its military doctrine, its investments in military hardware, infrastructure capabilities, technologies, have all been built with a direct war with the U.S. in mind, because the U.S. has obviously, you know, threatened to attack and eliminate and destroy and bomb Iran to the Stone Age for decades now. So Israel doesn't even play in Iran's military calculations. It's not going to be diverted by a war with Israel. it's saving its big guns for the inevitable, some of them believe, war with the United States. So yeah, Israel doesn't really, deserve much of Iran's attention for those 12 days. Iran was really, really holding back, biding their time, doing little, piddly messaging, which eventually the Israelis got because they went running to the Americans, please stop this, So yeah, Iran's not going to divert itself to Israel. If Israel wants to start up again, Iran will certainly, probably in less than 12 days, the Israelis will be screaming for American intervention. But does Trump have the appetite for that? I don't know.
CNN came out with a report over the past day in which they said that the U.S. spent 25% of their THAAD missile batteries and missile interceptors. I mean, their whole stock, a fourth of their entire stock of these.
In 12 days, the U.S. spent a quarter of their inventory of defensive missiles.
And they can only produce, I think, between 12 and 18 per year. That's insanity. That's insanity. David's link don't work. Donates $5. Thanks for your work. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone here. Make sure to drop your like if you haven't. So yeah, CNN comes out with these. The figures are £5. Sorry, the figures that CNN gives are even higher than the ones we have been working with. Because we were saying like, I think it's like almost a quarter. Actually, no, it was actually 25%. That's a lot for these interceptors.
After this war ended, it just seems like every week we're getting some breakdown that is even worse news for the Americans and the Israelis than we anticipated, right? So little things are being uncovered. These are their political games and they're infighting with each other. Some want to support Israel, some don't, some want to support Ukraine. They have their own turf wars on foreign policy within the United States. Some want China in the firing line, some want Russia, others want Iran, yet more want Pakistan or North Korea or Venezuela. So this is what I'm saying, like, it's not just the Israeli frog that's boiling, it's the American frog, but Israel is the ultimate global issue. I mean, Gaza. That is accelerating empire's downfall, and Trump, God bless him, is helping by trying to punish anyone who stands up against genocide, including entire states, including entire financial institutions, major corporations, you name it. That is going to mean that is de-dollarization, cutting out the U.S. economy from people's calculations. It's just, that's where we're heading. Empire will collapse and Israel will be the final trigger.
I want to mention something, by the way, and this is a topic that really none of us are experts in, but obviously, the conflict between Thailand and Cambodia. Something very interesting happened, and it was the Malaysian prime minister who brokered the peace, right? He's the one that came in and brokered the peace. What else did the Malaysian prime minister do over the past month? He hosted the Asian summit, in which is pushing for de-dollarization. I think he also hosted the one with the GCC, in which the GCC gets invited to join the world's largest free trade zone. And then in the BRICS summit a couple of weeks ago, he gives this speech in which he says what Brazil and Lula and all of these people are pushing for the new coin, the new BRICS currency. It's the right way. This is the only way. And he speaks against a Western hegemony. And he says what's happening here with BRICS is a continuation, of a battle that started decades ago. He talks about the non-aligned movement, et cetera, et cetera. So all of a sudden, I think we are getting more and more examples of how the global South it's taking center stage, as you said, Charmaine, with the Colombia summit and all of these things. The new leadership, the new world is being born from the South.
And the thing is, there's 150 countries of the global South, more or less. Yeah. Any one of their leaders who wants to propel themselves, their unknown selves, onto the international stage today or tomorrow, literally has to take this issue to the max, and instantly people will fall in love with, this persona, will be sharing their speeches on TikTok. I remember Duterte and his very unexpected foreign minister, Teddy Locsin, who would just call out the Americans. They became beloved. And CNN started calling them the Duterte regime. This is also an opportunity for a global South aspiring powerhouse to break out of the sort of, the masses and or the ranks and just, position themselves on the global stage and impact the global stage.
Give us your thoughts, Karim. We've been hogging up the airtime here, Sharmin and me.
Yeah, but the problem is that they can't. I don't know if they can maintain this or do they have the power to resist this. For instance, you talked about the president of Philippines. Yeah,
Malaysia, the prime minister of Malaysia.
no, Duterte.
Duterte. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
So he was like somehow pro China, and it was like less than 10 years ago, I think.
No,
Or
he played both sides.
He played both sides, but he also said that he doesn't want a military foreign bases in his soil. But now we saw that, for instance, last week there was like somehow a military confrontation between Philippines and China. So that's what I always talk about. They can't maintain this. And for instance, when the United States saw that Philippines might have like independent foreign policy, they will jump in and they will try to change it. And unfortunately, I think they succeeded in this. So the
No,
problem
they
is that
had to have elections, and the new guy was promising other things, and he's been swayed elsewhere, but he can be swayed back. I mean, this is kind of what's happening with Cambodia and Thailand right now in their border skirmishes. That has become very threatening. The Cambodian rulership is quite, up the American arses, as you would say, and Thailand is like the only country in the region that's never been colonized. Not to say that they don't have anti-China policies or pro-US policies, but these countries are increasingly exercising more independence because of the rise of the second bloc, because of obvious things. I mean, imagine that Vietnam is, and Japan, these guys are striking deals with the Americans on tariffs, okay? But at the same time, they're recognizing, because they don't want to lose the American market, let's say, but in short shrift, after August and these go into effect, they're going to realize that actually these markets are no longer as lucrative for them because someone else is competing better, or you know what I mean? And there are other markets to consider. So I think Trump's punishments are accelerating this and making states that are naturally inclined toward U.S. global networks, led global networks,
Yes.
finance, telecommunications, shipping, etc., are now actually actively examining other options. And are there other options? There sure are.
I mean, right now in the world, you have kind of two options, right? Like we saw Ursula von der Leyen in Washington this week. Like the only thing she needed to do was call Trump daddy, just to reach Mark Rutte's level.
Well, the head of NATO did,
disgraceful,
yeah.
like disgusting. But she's still, right? Like she was like fawning over this man. And then at the same time, you have a leader like Luis Inácio Lula da Silva in Brazil, who is like not backing down at all against the Trump tariffs. So,
but this is what I was saying.
Okay.
The point is that these are works of individuals, not countries. And you gave the example of the Prime Minister of Malaysia, yes?
Mhm.
The Prime Minister of Malaysia, the moment he left office, okay, the one who came before him, now he's in jail because he took money from Saudi Arabia and he shifted the policy of the country. And the current one had to come back to fix things. So, for instance, we know whoever comes as a president for the United States, we know his policy, his at least foreign policy. Whoever comes to the UK, we know his foreign policy, and so on and so on. But what happened, for instance, as you gave example for Brazil, Lula is opposite to the other guy who what he was his name?
Bolsonaro. Jair Messias.
Yeah, so still the global south is swinging between a mentality or a policy of a person. What we want to see as a change is the foreign policy and the internal policy of a country should be dictated whoever comes as a president, as we see in the West. So when today I see, for instance, Philippines with the global south, after 2 years, it might not be in the global south. That's my point. we should have more influence, more maybe conferences. I don't know what they should do.
All of that is, I get your point. What I'm saying is what you're describing has been going on for decades, all right? So pro-US heads of state emerge, and then the US pays more attention, and they get ousted in the next election cycle. What I'm saying, though, is as ASEAN countries start to work more closely together, there already are and regional, especially regional organizations are trying to resolve their own issues within their region, whether they're financial, military, economic, political, and that's changing. So now the US has to have its fingers in every dike in every country. And they just don't have the soft power capabilities or the threat capabilities that they had even 2 years ago. Their ability to absolutely dictate to countries is diminishing as the rising blocs' interest in mediating and collectively organizing solutions is increasing. What you're saying is right, but that era is ending. It doesn't mean it's ended. It is ending decisively.
And I think a good example of that is, did you see that the US government set up Binmo and I think PayPal accounts for people to help pay the foreign debt, which currently stands at like over $37 trillion?
Is that real?
It is. It was official, or wasn't it? I am pretty sure it was, because the way I saw it being reported in several places, and to me it looked legit. And actually, given the policies of this government, I'm not surprised. You have, a few weeks ago, you had a Bloomberg reporting that European banks working in Asia are moving towards national currencies. They're asking to buy, national currencies from Hong Kong, from even China, other ones, even the euro as well. Is to move from the dollar. Like, everyone's really scrambling, trying to move away from the dollar. And so you're seeing kind of like this bigger push against, and the weight, $37 trillion of foreign debt. That's 124% of the US GDP. That's insane. That's complete insanity. And China dropping US securities as well. We talked about this on Monday. Yeah. Or no, last Thursday we talked about this.
Can you imagine the suckers who are paying tax and then also chipping in to pay off the US debt, which is growing faster than they can even pay the minutest percentage of? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Like, they are just paying the interest. Like, the interest is already like the biggest payments ever. Karim, do you want to read some of we've gotten a few donations?
Yeah, we had a few donations. First, thank Pink Rose again. She says Iran exposed how weak Israel really is.
True.
And Clifford Bostria 4397, he donated $20. Thank you. And he said, we love Cradle, pro-indie journalism.
We also have one from Shah, €5.
Yeah, I wanted to read it at the last.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he or she, they say, I've just seen Israel video propaganda when joining your live. I nearly shocked on it. That's insane. They are saying UN is blocking food deliveries.
That's what they're saying. The UN is responsible for the family.
I cut it to the end because I wanted to put a video of what Trump said yesterday, which also shocked me. I will play it now.
Will I do more aid? Yeah. The U.S. is going to do more aid for Gaza, but we'd like to have other countries participate. We're going to mention that to the European Union today. That's an international problem. It's not a U.S. problem. It's an international problem. And we're giving a lot of money and a lot of food and a lot of everything. If we weren't there, I think people would have starved, frankly. They would have starved. And it's not like they're eating well. But a lot of that food is getting stolen by Hamas. They're stealing the food. They're stealing a lot of things. You ship it in and they steal it. Then they sell it.
Wow.
Indeed.
Yeah. I love that USAID then comes out with an analysis showing that there is no evidence of Hamas stealing food or supplies. Trump is really parroting the Israeli official narrative, which is, let's be honest, he's surrounded his own donors and funders, right? Very pro-Israel. He's surrounded himself now with particularly pro-Israel crowd. And so he's repeating stuff that his own agencies are refuting.
Exactly, and I'm sure soon enough we're going to get a report saying, that this was pro-Hamas elements in USAID, because of course.
Or USAID is Hamas.
USAID is Hamas. Oh, a new donation. NASA Foresight, $5. Thank you for everything you're doing. Your informed and varied perspectives are so valuable to cut through the warped and distorted media narratives. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to leave your like. It's very, very important for us. It's very important to continue to grow. I completely lost my train of thought. I had another topic that I wanted to bring up.
I want, if I can jump in and just talk about like today's feature. As you mentioned, Esteban, the Palestinian statehood issue is front and center at the UN today. I think we should just break this down a little bit for you folks out there. Our article today is basically, our analysis today is asking, is this Palestinian statehood they're seeking or Palestinian surrender? And our author, Malik Hur, is also the editor of the Cradle Arabi.
I love Malik.
I think is right on target when he, first of all, the United Nations has already recognized the Palestinian state. I mean, the vast majority of UN member states have recognized the Palestinian state already. The fact that we're hearing discussion about recognition of Palestinian state, I think, gives the impression that the UN or states within the UN have not, this is an ongoing issue for them, and it's not. It's only an ongoing issue for a handful of Western states, okay? Now, France and the UK have suddenly come out sounding critical of Israel. This is not because they're actually critical of Israel. This is to get in front of the activities that are going to be emerging out of the international community, the real international community, the ones that are more than just a handful of Western states.
The actual world, yes.
Correct. Because they're seeing those emerge. They're hearing this in private meetings in every capital where they have embassies. Okay, and so they're trying to get ahead of the issue. They're going to sponsor Palestinian statehood initiative, right? But what they're really going to do is whittle it down to nothing. Okay, where if you have a state, it'll be not area A, not area B, not even area C, maybe like little floaty islands with no security and scary Palestinian Authority guards who will shoot at Palestinians more than the Israelis will, So they're looking to get ahead of this issue and reframe it to their advantage and to Israel's advantage. This is bogus. The world has already recognized the Palestinian state. The fact that this is being discussed at the UN is a ploy. It's a media ploy. It's a circus, okay? It's pure theater. So
yes.
Also, in addition to that, our feature today talks about kind of like how France is sucking up to the Saudis big time, because the Saudis have always insisted, right, through the first Trump administration, the Abraham Accords, which they wouldn't sign on to, through the Joe Biden administration, and into Trump 2.0, they've insisted that there has to be a Palestinian state or a real path to Palestinian statehood, not like the fake Oslo one, all right, in order for them to normalize with Israel. And now the French want to butter up the Saudis on this because Paris is seeking closer ties to Riyadh, which has tethered its normalization agenda to normalization of Tel Aviv to progress on the Palestinian file. But France's recognition of Palestine is absolutely a lot to do with getting ahead of this issue and manipulating it. Okay, so Israel gets what it needs, but also to get some money from Riyadh. And let me explain. Karim, you had pointed out in previous podcasts how France was in Syria so early, trying to get coastal rights, right? In sort of an area of Syria that is pretty anti this government, okay, the Al-Qaeda government that the West has supported. Paris now, therefore, is linking itself to also, I believe, which is not in the feature, but linking itself to Riyadh to ride Riyadh's cash coattails into Syria and get some bigger rewards, some bigger projects, you know, that the Syrian government like puts out for bids, etc., in Syria. Meanwhile, the British suddenly, I mean, Keir Starmer is the worst Zionist I've seen in U.S. governance, UK governance in a really long time. Like the French, Palestine is also now just a currency for the British, okay? They're not moving toward recognizing a Palestinian statehood out of any kind of, you know, moral reasons, but rather to get ahead of this, you know, the change in the global sentiment about Gaza and their determination to act on it, to get ahead, to craft a solution, a resolution that's favorable to Israel. But also, Malik argues that the London is increasingly interested in cozying up to Ankara, okay, Turkey, that is being very, very aggressive in West Asia, and actually acting out quite a NATO favorable agenda, whether it's against Iran, in cahoots with Azerbaijan, right, in cahoots with Israel, you know, helping NATO infiltrate the South Caucasus and Central Asia. These are things the British always like to get ahead. They're always setting the scenes for the Americans, defining the next fight. So London gets to not only deepen its ties with Ankara, which Erdogan would like to position himself as a major influencer in the establishment of Palestinian state, but the British also get a foothold if they, you know, team up with Ankara. Sorry, I'm dragging on, I'm almost done. They team up with Ankara, they get a foothold in all of northern Syria. The Israelis, you know, kind of have what they want in the south, right? But the British want to get in with Ankara in order to, again, divert what's happening in Syria, contracts, tenders, bids, etc., in their favor. And of course, no interest really in Turkey, but, you know, to keep Western footprint all over Syria. So actually, as our author today sees it, there's a Paris, Riyadh, and Ankara, London axes that are developing for entirely interest-based politics, hard, cold geopolitics, nothing to do with Palestine. In fact, London and Paris are, you know, guaranteed to bring a very aberrant version of a Palestinian state concept to the UN and try to hammer it through the international community, you know, distract them. Look at our initiatives here, so stop your initiatives there.
Exactly.
I'm done.
Exactly. I don't have much to add, honestly, but it's theater. It's not going to change the reality on the ground. The Knesset has already outlawed the recognition of a Palestinian state. They are, you know, Israel is a country with no constitution and no actual borders, you know, no official borders. This is a nation that is also constantly expanding their occupation of the West Bank, every week approving new settlements. Same for Gaza. Just last week, you know, Smotrich, the finance minister, held this conference with a bunch of settler leaders, including Daniel Abbas, the settler grandma, according to CNN, to resettle Gaza. So this vote is just going to end up being in paper. Karim, as a, you know, as an Arab man who has been witnessing this genocide, this apartheid state since essentially, you know, your first days here on Earth, what do you think it means for the UNGA to even vote for a Palestinian state?
I said my opinion previously, and I still hold my ground. Having a Palestinian state, it's very vague. We don't know what they mean. Do they mean that they will give more power to Mahmoud Abbas? Although Mahmoud Abbas is a US pawn already, and he's not friends maybe with Netanyahu, but all the previous ones, he was like a pawn for them. He does whatever Israel wants. His current problem is that now the current government wants all of West Bank. He doesn't have any problem killing, jailing, even like kidnapping anyone who is against Israel. But now the problem is that they want all of West Bank. And currently, why they are pushing it and they are doing, we're seeing that there's many vast movements because Smotrich and Ben Gvir and Netanyahu and all the media that are behind them, they say it honestly that we can annex West Bank now because we have Trump. They don't have a guarantee that after Trump, if they will have this power or no. So that's why they are, yes.
I was just going to say that was allegedly the promise that he made Miriam.
Yeah. So now they have like around 3 years to do it. Will they be able or not? We don't know. But that's why they are pushing for it. They have a window of 3 years. And in this 3 years, they don't care about Mahmoud Abbas. But if it didn't work, Mahmoud Abbas will continue if God give him like more years to live because he's around 85 years. So that's it. So what I am saying now, my answer is, if France gave a Palestinian statehood and currently Mahmoud Abbas is there and he will represent, for instance, Palestine in UN and other places, you will see a Palestinian going live on TV saying that Hamas is disgrace, resistance is not the way, and it will be a negative thing for the cause of the Palestinian struggle and the Palestinian people. So yes.
It's more likely going to be Abu Shabab, the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, and also I think if they tell Mahmoud Abbas, we will not do this or we will pressure Israel not to annex the West Bank, but say that you only want the West Bank, he will say, "Khalas, let Israel take Gaza, give us West Bank, and stop the resistance." This is the man who is ready to say this anytime, any day.
Indeed.
So, I want to say, for sure, the Israelis think Mahmoud Abbas is not slavish enough. So I don't think they'll want Mahmoud Abbas, to be honest. Okay. Also, he's quite old. And when I was there in 2009, they were like, "Oh, he's not so well. He's at home most of the time." He's still around. Okay. So I think they will have someone even worse than him. And I think it'll probably be someone picked by the UAE, because there is no country in the Arab world as dedicated to Israel's advancement for some reason than the UAE. I haven't understood their calculations entirely because, to be honest, I think they're opportunistic. They're rational state. They go by interests. And I'm not sure why they're not seeing that Israel ultimately, that the Emirati interest is changing. The worse Israel's image gets, becomes harder to sustain this, okay, domestically, unless they have a full mind control in the UAE and they don't care what their citizens love Israel as much as they do. With the exception of the UAE, every single Arab leader, okay, is having a hard time with Israel, because Israel, they have all kinds of concepts in the past of how Israel could benefit them. Open lines of communication with Washington, all the military hardware they want that they weren't able to get in the past, all kinds of contracts, all kinds of goodies, all right, by normalizing with Israel. But now they're seeing a very weakened US-Israel alliance, in the sense that the world's turned against this, and then watching Iran, do such incredible damage to Israel's, psychology, the belief that this was, the strongest state in the region, untouchable, was also a game changer and awakening. As is, for instance, Trump's inability, Biden's inability to stave off the threat that the Yemenis are posing to Israeli shipping and Western shipping. These are all things that are causing recalculations. Now, I read today a piece translated from a independent Jordanian publication, which honestly, after the few years of being in existence, doesn't sound that independent to me anymore. But it talked about how Jordans like watching in horror as Israel basically takes over the West Bank, like without being able to do anything about it. Now, this is easy for the Saudis. Maybe the Saudis are like, you know what? This will solve our Palestine issue problem if Israel just rams the Palestinians on the West Bank out of there into Jordan. Jordan's not that useful to us anymore. Let's just let that happen and this all goes away. On the other hand, the Saudis are throwing money at Syria, but they're not doing it because they're okay with the Syrian government. We will have a feature soon, by the way, Esteban, I know you don't know about this, on Arab leaders being happy to shake the hands of Ahmed al-Shara, but they're not happy behind the scenes for a variety of reasons. Okay, when I say Ahmed al-Shara, I mean Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, the Al-Qaeda head and ISIS deputy. So the Arab countries, will Saudi Arabia just be okay with Jordan flitting away into, this new Palestinian state? Or are the Saudis pumping money into Syria in order to make sure the Turks do not have a clean sweep, the Turks and the Israelis, okay, have a control over a major Arab civilizational state, okay? They have not forgotten the Ottoman Empire, all right? Syria means something to the Arabs. Every Gulf Arab has vacationed in Syria, has spent their money buying beautiful Syrian furniture, mother of pearl carved things, fancy lingerie. I mean, for years it was a mecca for Gulf Arabs to go shopping. They had second homes there. The Saudi rulers, the Qatari rulers, etc. They're not going to let Syria slip away. Now, why I say that the Saudis are secretly very, very concerned about the Turkish influence in Syria is also because right now the Saudi ambassador in Lebanon has suddenly made a beeline for Tripoli, the second largest city in Lebanon, Sunni city by and large, and always a place where the Saudis played in local politics. The Saudis have stayed out of Lebanese politics for a few years now for various reasons, but they're suddenly coming back full force trying to find new proteges there, big businessmen, political leaders, to replace some of their old ones, re-engaging with their old political powerhouses from Tripoli. All of this is happening, I think, because the Cradle dropped an article a week or so ago saying Turkey was aiming to take out Tripoli and make it not just a political center for Turkish activities, but an economic powerhouse for Turkey, Tripoli port, etc.
Yes.
And that they were coordinating their actions in Tripoli out of headquarters in Damascus with the Syrian government. Okay, so don't think the Arab powerhouses, okay, like the Saudis or even the Qataris who've been sidelined from many of these things as the big players engage, don't think they're sitting back. At this point, the competition between Arabs, so among Arabs, between Arabs and Western interests, between Arab and Turkish interests are far bigger than between Arab and Iranian. Truly, truly. And this is a new turn of events. The Arabs are, like I've always said, in the Syrian theater, when the militants took over an area, they were CIA backed, they were State Department backed, they were British backed, French backed, Qatari, Turkish, Saudi, Emirati backed. Within 48 hours, they were shooting at each other. This is what's happening in the mind, the collective mind of all the region's players and its external ones that have wanted to maintain a foothold here. In their collective minds, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, and Lebanon are up for grabs. And everyone's making haste to take a chunk of it.
This reminds me of a story we actually wanted to talk about, and it completely skipped our minds. And I'm looking at it right here. Where is it? It's about.
We have a couple of donations.
Go ahead, Karim. I found it.
No, I'm telling you, there's a couple of donations if you want to read them also.
Can you read them? Let me just go over this very quickly.
Yeah, go ahead, Karim. Tell us the donations.
Yeah, we have from NRJ $10, and we have $2 again from Shah or SHA. He says or she says, can you please check our transparency link? I have no idea what they are talking about. I didn't see any link. And NRJ, he says it's more of a prestige issue for Europe, US, France to recognize a Palestinian state. Now, as the pressure is mounting among their constituents, one majority of the world has recognized the same.
So thank you very much. Make sure to leave a like, please. What is it?
No, I wanted to say something about Sharia and the new leader and why everybody is going there. I want to comment over Sharmeen, things that we only listen and hear and see videos on social media in Arabic, is that they are portraying him as if he is the new Bani Umayyah or the Umayyad clans. I don't know in English, I think it's like this. So the Umayyah were a clan who they were against Prophet Muhammad, and then they turned and they became Islam, and they were known for their butchery, and they used to kill many people. And usually the Sunnis that are very, very extreme, they love Bani Umayyah. So when Sharia came, they are, and Siyas and Bani Umayyah, their capital was Damascus, although they came from the Arab Peninsula. So they are portraying as if Sharia is the new leader of Bani Umayyah. He's like the new leader of Sunnis, and he will conquer the Arab world and go to Europe and liberate Israel. They are still portraying him as if he's like the savior of the Arabs and Muslims.
My God.
So when somebody talks
Julani?
about him, especially in Gulf news or in Gulf media, or he's like somebody from UAE, from Saudi Arabia or Qatar, they are as if he's like a new prophet that came from the sky to save the Arabs. So I just want to assure people to know about this, because this you will never hear it in English or foreign newspapers or media.
And in English media, you only hear about how tall and strong and handsome he is. Let me mention this quickly, because this is something we skipped. And you reminded me, Sharmeen, when you were talking about like they think Iraq is up for grabs. Last week, Power China secured a $4 billion contract to build Iraq's first large-scale seawater desalination plant in Basra, in a partnership with a local firm. This was announced by officials in Iraq. The signing ceremony was attended by Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, the prime minister. This is a big deal. This is a big deal, and I think this is the second large-scale infrastructure project that China signs in the last few months here in the region, right? And Basra port in particular, it's part of the Turkish transit corridor, right? That they want to like connect the Gulf to Turkey eventually through Europe. But like I say, Power China signs this $4 billion contract. China is still making moves in the region.
Yeah, I remember GE. I think China took over the GE contracts too when they were coming up for, or GE sold their contract. I guess something like that. I mean, it's interesting because there's this view that Iraq is so completely under the American thumb, but this Iraqi prime minister,
Sudani
needs to show some results if he's going to be reelected. And the Americans
next year, right?
Never are able to deliver results on infrastructure. Okay, so this is a big deal. He's also, trying to walk that tightrope or fence it between the Iranian influence and U.S. influence in Iraq, which is a hard, I think, act for any Iraqi prime minister. He's just managed to, and we're going to write about this at the Cradle as well in the coming week or two. He's also managed to, flatten the Kurdish-Turkish oil project, right? Where the Kurdish areas would sell illegally oil to Turkey without going through Baghdad, right? And keeping that money. So, they won a court case against Turkey, and then in part of their, how they've, how Ankara and Baghdad have solved this is leading to direct Baghdad, Ankara energy exports, right? So there's and also don't forget, Turkey is very much now part of the new development road project in Iraq, which connects the port in near Basra, the very, very south of Iraq, which is the tip of the Persian Gulf, all the way through to northern Iraq and into Turkey. So there's, these projects are a way for Baghdad to keep, both Iran and the U.S. at bay, meaning not, right? He's doing some right things. On the other hand, we have a very, very the difficult issue of the PMUs, the popular mobilization units, the forces that fought ISIS basically during ISIS's invasion occupation of Iraq, who were majority Shia, but at the same time there's Christian and Sunni and other Hashd al-Shabi PMUs. And today, last week we'd mentioned maybe, and today I saw again that they're trying to, because just recently they were, the Americans have been telling them you have to get rid of the Hashd altogether. You can't just fold them into your national armed forces because then you'll have an Iranian agenda in the national forces. It's a very simplistic way of looking at the Hashd. The Hashd are very multifaceted. There are Iraqi nationalists in there. There are pro-Iran people. There are pro their own interest people, very provincial focused. There's a lot of different flavors to the Hashd, but the Americans view it through only the prism of Iran. They're wrong. So now there's a counter legislation that may be coming up for vote in the Iraqi parliament, which is to actually farm out the Hashd under its own steam. Like it'll be its own security force, its own unit, and will have a multi-billion-dollar budget. I actually don't know how that has gathered steam, because just a few weeks ago, the legislation was about like just folding them into the Iraqi armed forces and kind of disappearing them. And now all of a sudden, there's a fight on to give them their own security unit throughout the whole entire country. Iraq is easier, I think, to do a Chinese contract. There was a precedent for it. Whereas Abdul Mahdi, what was his name? Abdul Mahdi, the prime minister who got ousted during the revolution, who tried to do business with China, got ousted. That was one of the main three reasons. But Iraq has changed since then. In Lebanon, though, if you bring up a Chinese project or a Russian project, oh my God.
Yeah, blasphemy. I found the General Electric story that you were trying to refer. I'm just going to read the brief very quickly. The subtitle is a feature that we published, 2 years ago. My God. U.S. energy giant General Electric holds a vice grip over Iraqi energy matters. Since the U.S. invasion, Iraq has spent $85 billion on its electricity sector, but still faces 12-hour daily power outages. So why is GE still getting contracts it won't fulfill? The title is Spoils of War, General Electric's Role in Iraq's Energy Crisis. Look it up. Very interesting read. Yes, you bring up Lebanon, like Karim. But do you think Lebanon is ever going to get a contract, for like a new desalination plant or maybe a power plant from China?
Okay, I will. Everybody will tell me I am negative and whatever. So I don't think so at all. And I even think what happened in Iraq is under the blessing of the United States. Iraq can't sign such a deal without the approval of the United States. Iraq has been occupied by the U.S. since 2003. Iraq, they have nothing, and they don't control their air. They don't control their crossings, and they don't control their waters. The crossing, God knows who controls them. Part is the United States, part is Turkey. Turkey have bases in north of Iraq. The Kurdish forces, they have checkpoints with the border of the Syria, and Bukamal and surrounding areas, they have checkpoints by the United States. The south is controlled by UAE and Saudi Arabia, and the airspace is fully controlled by Iraq. Iraq don't know what airplanes are flying over it, and we saw that more than once.
There's been a bunch of drone attacks recently.
Yeah, drone attack. Nobody knows. Even if you ask a security officer in Iraq or in the national media, they will tell you we don't know, even if they know, because it's fully controlled by the United States. And that's a military way. And in the financial way, Sharmiz knows more than me that all the oil produced by Iraq is sent to New York. And if
The profits.
and if the Iraq government wants to pay somebody, they have to file.
They have to ask.
Statement or whatever. They have to ask
written permission. Written permission.
Yeah, and I will give an example. What happened? You talked about this very interesting article that we wrote 2 years ago. Just I want to give a little detail so people will know what we are talking about. So Iraq, usually most of the power in Iraq was via petroleum and oil. And suddenly when the United States came in Iraq and occupied it, they forced the government to switch from oil to gas. So this is the main point. So the Iraqis told them yes, because they are occupied. And then when General Electric came to make the switch, they couldn't, and they were unreliable. Until now, that's the main problem. So what happened is the solution was that Iraq should get electricity from Iran, because Iran, they have excessive power. So what happened, Iran gave Iraq electricity. And then when they came for Iraq to pay for the Iranians, the Iraqis told the Americans, please give us our money from New York because we want to buy the Iranians. And they told them, no, Iran is sanctioned. So what happened is that Iran cut off the electricity after several weeks from Iraq. And you will see the headlines all over the world. Iran stopped supplying power to Iraq. So that's my opinion about Iraq. And all this that I said convinced me that there is no say for any prime minister or president. And as Sharmeen mentioned, there's only one prime minister that came and tried to make business with other countries, and they ousted him in less than 1 year. And we have on the cradle, when you go under our interview section, we have an interview with the ex-prime minister of Iraq.
Indeed.
By the way, I mean, again, that was 2019, and we're now in 2025. So we're talking about the U.S. not being able to put its fingers in all the dike holes that are emerging everywhere. So what I've said is correct, and what you've said is correct. These are Iraq's limitations. Yet at the same time, Iraq is getting to decide to bypass the, Erbil on the oil thing, which the Americans and Israelis and Turks supported for ages. They're getting to do that. They're getting to give big multi-billion-dollar contracts to the Chinese. I'm sure the Americans are either getting something in return or are not pushing on all these issues because they have like one or two core issues and they want. So what I'm saying is the climate for American diktats is also diminishing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I fully
understand. So neither is wrong. It's just, we're contextualizing it to support what we think is coming. I don't disagree with you. The Americans have tried to control everything in Iraq. They do not. You have a president who doesn't give a shit. Like, he literally just wants money. Okay. That's the thing. Trump is transactional. The bottom line is he's not going to put up with a lot of stuff. If it becomes a pain in the butt and, American bases start getting targeted, he'll do a few dramatic strikes on Iraq and say game over. And the Iraqis will be able to walk a different line after that because they know more won't be coming. There's a lot of possibilities. For sure, nobody can say anything with any absolute confidence on any of these countries, but the Americans cannot, like I said, have their fingers everywhere. And don't forget, Iraq is also very startled by Al-Qaeda operating with the adoration of all Western governments right on its border in Syria. These are things that will create collision of interests with the Americans.
Indeed. Since we're on the topic of U.S. meddling, I want to mention this. for sure. And Karim, you have the article, I think, ready. It's a report from The Lancet that was published last week. Everybody knows The Lancet, right? It's renowned British scientific journal that comes out with a study that says economic sanctions led by the US, right? The United States' new favorite weapon over the past 20 or so years, are responsible for an estimated 660, I'm sorry, are responsible for an estimated 564,000 deaths each year, most of them children under the age of 5. Now, this research analyzed data from 152 countries over a 10-year period and found that the mortality rate of sanctions is comparable to that of armed conflict. And of course, by targeting key economic sectors such as finance, energy, and anything else, trade, sanctions restrict access to critical imports. Well, we know all of this. Last year, the Washington Post came out with an analysis that said 1/3 of the global population lives under U.S. sanctions. That is insane. And at the same time, now you have a scientific study that says over 500,000 people, more than 500,000 people die every year because of U.S. sanctions. And sanctions have been present through the ages, essentially, right? Like the U.S. government has been imposing sanctions on Cuba since 1962. They have been imposing sanctions now over the past 25 years since the start of the war on terror. It becomes the preferable form of warfare because the toll is less visible. And we've seen it everywhere, right? We're seeing it, of course, Cuba, Venezuela, all of the Latin American nations are sanctioned. Syria, since the Caesar Act, a sanction regime that also affected Lebanon directly and very adversely. The same in Iran, which the food insecurity rate is actually pretty high. Then you have nations like Russia that a few years ago became the most sanctioned nation on earth. You have nations like Zimbabwe. You have nations like, it's just like an endless stream of nations that are under US sanctions. And now you have this scientific study telling you, hey, to all of those idiots, because I don't have any other word to refer to them, who say, no, the sanctions are just for the leadership, it's just the Azaris, or it's just the people like Maduro's government or whatever. No, sanctions are a weapon of war. And now we have a scientific study that shows just how badly they impact the population of those nations.
I think the U.S. is pretty clear, at least to me, that the U.S. doesn't have the military power to overextend itself and to control countries and occupy them, for sure. And really, like the sanctions tool, the punitive financial tools were their main way forward for many, many years now. And I welcome them sanctioning everybody on earth. I really do. It's the only way to for people to learn that it's time to move to cut the U.S. dominated global financial system, because
USD reliance.
Yeah, exactly. So bring it on, Trump. Sanction us all.
Sanction the Kremlin. No, don't sanction the Kremlin. I take that back. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding, guys. Yeah. So
commenting on this is it's not funny, but it's coincidence that the same number was asked to Madeleine Albright, I think like 20 years ago or more.
Yeah.
90s, yeah.
And it was about one country, which is Iraq. When she asked her, the reporter asked Madeleine Albright, that was the foreign minister of the United States back then, and she told her there's reports saying that 500,000 children in Iraq are dying because of sanctions. And she looked at her on the camera, I forgot, and she said it's worth it. So I think the United States is doing a progress, or it's a fake report, because previously they killed 500,000 children only in Iraq, and now they are saying 500,000 in the whole world. I still doubt it, because if you look at North Korea, Venezuela, Iran, and even don't forget that the sanctions is not about money. Iran is denied to have medical equipment and medical even staff going there. They were sanctioned.
Pharmaceuticals, diagnostic.
Yes. Yeah, and
medicine,
we know that Iran is a huge country, around 91, 92 million people, and we have Venezuela, and there's Cuba, as you mentioned, North Korea, and many individuals in Africa and the Arab world. It's not only about countries. So I think indirectly United States kills more than 1 million, 2 million people.
I always think of that very stupid the victims of communism, book or a study that says like communism has killed over 100 people, 100 million people, and they include like all of the Nazis that were killed, by the Russians
Yeah.
during the Second World War. And then you have to wait until 2025 for a scientific study to come out and tell you, well, look at what the U.S.-led global world order has been doing with their economic sanctions. And I think what you said, Charmaine, is actually very on point, because by weaponizing their currency, you turn people away from it, right? And this is what BRICS is doing. This is what ASEAN is doing. And this is gonna continue to snowball. And we hope that sooner rather than later, because this is an empire that is really out to get everyone who even speaks out against them.
The thing, don't you think though that, I don't know, I feel like on all fronts the U.S. is diminishing, like so it's so obvious, and yet they keep plodding along this well-worn path of theirs that has unintended consequences. I don't know. I mean, I know, for instance, I do read like major bank reports, like a lot of U.S. investment banks, like the big ones, they do like for their client lists or others, they do like quarterly reports that are quite, geopolitical, because they need to calculate risk and like areas where there's war, or like oil prices might go up because of conflict. Banks do these things, and for a while now, major Western financial institutions are well aware of all these things. Do you know what I mean? I'm wondering if they're the main beneficiaries of, U.S. political power, meaning looking after their billionaires and their big companies and financial institutions. Then how are they not reading the tea leaves? Like it's too bizarre, when you have people on our side of the fence saying, "Come at us with it." The sooner they act, the sooner the unintended consequences, the faster the pushback, and the earlier we get to a new reality.
Exactly. I think is, at this point, the U.S. really is a nation that functions very similar to Israel. I don't really see a difference between the two of them. And I mean that on the political level, because Israel has Zionism, this demented supremacist ideology. The U.S. has manifest destiny. They have the Monroe Doctrine. They have, this belief that they are the rulers of the world. Joe Biden said we are the indispensable nation.
Yeah, do not exclude the British from this. They're the most malign actors on the regional stage, and well beyond this region too.
I don't know, for centuries they have been. I don't exclude them. The U.S. and Israel are an extension of the British Empire. But I guess we can get that in another discussion, because these news are going to continue.
Who comes first, the Brits or the Americans or the Israelis?
Before we end, we have to thank Law or Lav 66. I think as time goes on, China will continue to kick the butt of the U.S. financially and geopolitically in West Asia and the world.
You will have the cradle here telling you all about it. So make sure to drop a like, to share this video, to subscribe to our channel. On Thursday, we're going to start with the deep dives, right, Charmaine?
Yeah, we're going to have our first deep dive. I'm on it. It's not going to be me always, but forgive us any inadequacies. But we expect to do at least 2 a month, and who knows, maybe more, if we have your support. So please, the deep dive will be for Patreon only, at least for a while. And so please become a Patreon subscriber in order to have access to our, unique,
this new content,
much more detailed content. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We'll see you again on Thursday at the same time. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Karim Shami and Sharmeen Arwani, and we'll see you next time.